taping meetings.
We're recording now.
Yeah,
I guess I'll start,
So let you know.
I'll start this then, since you guys started yours.
very successfully.
Okay.
I'll see you in county June 2nd.
So just to be clear, do we need to make an official request for that, or can this be
I'll make it.
sufficient to
I'll
do
make you
it?
this.
Okay, thank you.
It's the new trend out, everybody's taking.
Not once they get a look at my face, they don't.
Well, tell me your good side. I can always move the camera.
Yeah.
Let me see how many I got here. Did you share?
Yeah,
I've
sure.
only got 7 copies.
That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
You guys are sharing. I want to thank everybody for coming today. Been about a year since we last met. I just passed out our official copy for contract year 2015-2016 proposals. We're asking for a 3-year contract with the County of Osceola with general wage increases in each of the 3 years. As you can see, year 1, year 2, year 3, 5% in each. The asterisk below it gives us some leverage or some wiggle room in case the county decides on doing a pay plan study. And I haven't heard from anybody in that realm. If you folks are doing a comparison pay plan study, and should the pay plan study show there is great agency compression, which I'm sure there is, and if the county is willing to address pay compression in this contract, whichever is the greater of the two.
So just so I get it, you're saying 5% is the floor, right? If the county were to decide to agree on 5%, and they subsequently, because of some analysis or something else, decided that paying some people additional money was necessary to spread
Correct.
the scale out, you're not going to be opposed to that?
No.
You just want them to get whatever's housed?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Number 2 is a shift differential to equal 50 cents for each hour worked between 6 p.m. and 6 a.m. We made that proposal our last go-round. Same talking points as the last time. It improves morale. It's an industry standard. Just for everybody here at the table, we had a meeting about a week ago, maybe 10 days ago. And at that meeting, there was 41 members showed up, which is 1/5 of your agency. It was probably the biggest meeting I've ever seen in my tenure. And I asked them, what do you guys want in negotiations? And they tell me, so these proposals aren't just coming from the business agent and Gary, this is coming from the membership from a recent meeting, and as close to an order of priority as we can make it. Number 3 is post-bid duration lengthened from 4 months to 6 months from Article 1. If you look at the first attachment, Article 1, I don't have strike-throughs, so what I did with the changes, I underlined them. Basically, the articles are the same, except for the underlined portions. In 1.4.1.1, we're asking that the bid post be changed every 6 months. In 1.4.2, employees cannot bid into the same post or consecutive non-inmate contact posts until they have completed a 1 rotation cycle. That used to be 2 years. And then 1.4.3, the last paragraph, due to the operational needs of the booking process, the 2 bargaining unit members assigned to booking for the longest periods will be rotated out yearly. That was quarterly. We just changed the word to yearly. If you look at 1.4.3, we have a subset below it, an A. Booking shall be staffed with at least 2 males and 2 females to handle the needs of the post. This is not in the contract. I understand it's not even in policy, but it's causing some of our most recent problems, and we'll get to that later on. If you'll look at 1.4.1.1 at the top, the A below it, an officer cannot be moved from his/her post on a permanent/lengthy basis without being notified as to the reason. Sometimes an officer is moved off their post and placed in a section of the jail foreign to them, something that they did not bid on, and they're not given any reason. And I can understand some of the reasoning behind it, but I think the officer has to be told the gist of why he's being removed, because we see that as discipline. If you bidded for a post and you're all of a sudden being moved off that post and placed somewhere else, and you're not told why, and it's night after night, we see that as discipline.
So what do you mean by permanent? Well, I get permanent. What about lengthy?
Well, if someone's cold and sick, or you have a situation where it mandates you have to plug someone into a position, that's understandable. But if 2 weeks later the guy's sitting there in his position going, well, why was I moved? And there's people saying, we can't tell you.
So, I'm just trying to get some clarification. So you're thinking 2 weeks is lengthy. Anything less than that would be tolerable. Anything more than that, they need to be straightforward about.
2 weeks would be the limit in my thinking. When we go to caucus, I'll ask them about it and see what's more reasonable. Yeah, like I said, the contract is silent on the booking appointees. And then we're asking for 2 males and 2 females to be placed, and that it be rotated out yearly. Number 4, reinstituting the sick leave buyback policy for 100% of the hours over the 192-hour threshold. I met with the chief on this. She said this was an old policy, a county policy. She wanted it to be reinstituted. She believed that it was an incentive to keep people from calling in sick, incentive for folks to bank and to cash in their hours later on. Does anybody know how long ago that policy was discontinued?
2010 were our new policies, and that was when we did away with that.
Okay, so we're asking that that be reinstituted. Number 5 is a sick leave incentive. Basically, we're trying to incentivize not calling in sick at your agency. When I talk to the chief, sick leave and FMLA tends to be the 900-pound gorilla over there. It hinders operations. things we've talked about, and I've seen it instituted in other places, if you go October 1st through September 30th of the year, if you don't call in sick, you get an extra pay period. You get a paycheck for not calling in sick. I've seen it used in other agencies. It works. It works too good sometimes. Sometimes you have people so sick they shouldn't be coming to work, but they don't want to lose their incentive, so they drag their butt in there and they make everybody else sick. But now, last year I heard the figure $1 million batted about, and what you folks have to spend on overtime, bringing people in. I heard that number is low, and I heard it was high, so, Brooke, can you speak to that any?
I would have to look at the numbers for sure, but I know that it is costly, and, some of the stuff you're talking about is very costly also.
Well, we have not costed it out. It's hard to cost out the agency. You got a high turnover rate, and we could give ballpark figures, but you're talking $1 million in overtime, an extra paycheck to 218 employees isn't even gonna come close to that. Let's say every employee, you got 218 employees and every one of them makes $1,000 a week, that's 218,000 right there. If you're spending $1 million,
That's if none of them call out.
correct. We're trying to make it, we're trying to incentivize coming to work and not calling in sick. Number 6 is the accrued holiday time to equal 11.5 hours for each county holiday. I know we put this on the table the last time. I'm told by the officers that the lieutenants get 11.5 for their holidays, but the officers get 8. Am I correct in that?
They're exempt, so I don't know, I don't know
Yeah.
how, they're exempt, I mean, they don't, I don't know how to speak to that. They're
Exempt in what way?
They're exempt employees, they don't
They don't get
work,
overtime.
they don't clock in and out.
They don't get overtime. So they get 11.5 hours because they are considered exempt.
Well, a day for day, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so if they work an 8-hour day, they get off an 8-hour day.
Yeah.
We're asking 11.5 hours as well for a holiday. Number 7, a floating holiday. This is just another incentive to put out there, to keep people from calling in sick again. 12 hours will be paid out in accrued hours or cash provided the employee, excuse me, provided the employee has not used more than 24 hours of sick leave in a calendar year. Christmas bonus, old Daytona tool. You basically get $1 for each week worked, 52 weeks, and pays for your turkey at the end of the year. Lastly, number 9, bilingual pay. We'd like to see officers compensated for 2% for proficiency with a second language. And the officer must be fluent in that language, able to read, write, and interpret. I don't know, I was told that there's a large percentage of officers at Osceola that are bilingual. But
Is there a test? How do you determine, or have they done that elsewhere?
Gary can speak to that. I think college can certify your proficiency. Is that not correct, Gary?
Yeah, and there's entities that are numerous around the community that can certify you, read, write, any, like, we think, there's a very large Hispanic population here, but if you get somebody that's in Mandarin Chinese, or
Right.
in my experience, I arrested a guy for DUI, he was from Germany. How do I communicate with him as public safety? Well, I had to find somebody in the community myself. Or if you get somebody like these Irish travelers, you know who those are? Those are some con men, a group, and they only speak Gaelic. I don't think you're gonna find somebody working in the jail occasionally, but if you do have somebody, then you can interpret those people and see what they're saying and help them through their process.
And that would include sign language, being able to speak with the deaf.
Yeah, good point. Somebody that's disabled, sure.
The last handout is the last page. 7.1.4.6. Al, you and I talked about this last year. Just changing the language from arbitrary and capricious to taken for cause. Basically, to change the standard of review of the arbitrator's decision on a disciplinary action grievance shall be whether the record establishes that the county proved that the disciplinary action was taken was for cause.
Okay. Is it fair for us to assume that if it's not included in this package, that the current language is acceptable to you?
Correct. This is something, you and I had spoken about the grievance arbitration language last year.
No, I'm talking about this, the overall set of proposals you've made.
Yes.
You know, there are some articles and obviously a lot of language you haven't proposed changing.
Right.
I just want to see what the scope of the issues are we have to look at.
Right. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's gonna change. Yeah. This is not all inclusive, this is just.
Okay, so this is just an opening
Right.
proposal, you may have more
Correct.
as we go. Okay. All right.
Some of this is not contractual, they're just some talking points, some of it might be expenditure of money might be needed. The employees wanted to fence in their private parking area. Apparently there was an incident in the parking lot where an officer was accosted. The officers feel that had there been storm fencing around the parking lot, that this attack may not have occurred.
Somebody got attacked in the parking lot.
It was an altercation. It was two, I think it was a domestic
Okay.
situation.
That's,
Yes,
I don't know, that's different from,
yes.
yeah.
All
Well,
right, so,
if you look from the front, and you guys correct me if I'm wrong, the front doors of that facility from your parking lot is like maybe 100 yards. So I can walk through the parking lot and key up the car.
And we have issues with people walking through the parking lot all the time.
Even parking.
Those are inmates being released.
Yeah,
They have a bus stop that sits right to the back of our vehicles at the outer gate on Simpson Road, so they set the bus stop right at our vehicles.
so, and I don't know anything about this incident, so this isn't meant to downplay that, but other than that incident, is there a pattern or history of problems in the parking lot?
There's been, officers' vehicles have gotten damaged, yes.
And, I mean, are there reports about that, or
Yeah, she would know about it.
Yes, there's been 2 incidents that we're aware of, and the damage to the officers' vehicles were caused by other staff members.
Like an accident,
Right.
not malicious.
Pulling out.
Right.
okay. All right,
Pete wanted to speak about the reactivation of certain posts within the jail, which he feels is mandatory and improves safety within the jail.
okay, so,
For instance, Charlie Pod, they removed one officer from there.
can I interrupt you just so
Yes.
I understand the context? So this isn't about a specific proposal, but just an operational issue that we
Correct.
want to discuss?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Charlie Pod, they removed one officer from there, now leaving 2 officers on the floor and 1 working in Charlie Bravo. In less than 30 days, there's been 3 fights already that nobody was aware of. The last fight just happened a few days ago. They didn't know about it until 24 hours later, and that's because the inmate ran out the pod because the guy was going to attack him again, and he said, "Hey, what's going on?" Then they went back and reviewed the camera, and they saw that the inmate was attacked. The same thing happened the 2 previous times, but the other 2 times the inmate didn't run out. Now, the reason why that occurred is because there's a violation of Florida Model Jail Standards where it states that all inmates must be within sight and normal sound of a certified correction officer at all times. Not once per hour, not once every 30 minutes, at all times. Now, would there have been another officer in there, they would have been able to do more checks versus stopping Charlie Echo with his high-risk inmates, and they need to do high-risk cell searches once per shift on every single high-risk inmate in there. Also do the checks on the other pods. There is a person up top on the control panel, but that is a civilian. For Florida Model Jail Standards, civilians are not allowed to monitor inmates, to supervise inmates. That has to be done by a correctional officer, certified correctional staff member. Also in Minimum West, we have multiple blind spots. There was an officer removed from there. Now, all the officers, I never worked Minimum West because I'm a male, that's strictly females. But the females that have worked there, like Officer Torres have said, that there are many blind spots in there. And if you go into one pod, the other blind spots are unattended, again in violation of Florida Model Jail Standards. Now, we go to Fox Bravo. For Fox Bravo, we have all types of classifications. Bravo floor allows 3 officers to be on the floor due to mental health inmates. Now, we have those mental health inmates in at Fox Bravo as well. The difference is, the ones that are at Fox Bravo are violent, most of them. Now, we have to remove them from their cells for 1 hour. The WARE policy states that we have to handcuff them, put them anywhere. We have to allow them out their cells for 1 hour recreational time in the day room area. Now, there's only 1 officer in there. If I get into a scuffle with that inmate, who's going to know I'm in trouble unless somebody's actually monitoring that video at that specific time? You know, we have high-risk inmates in there. We have the disciplinary inmates, which is the inmates who violate, break the rules inside the jail. We also have protected custody inmates in there. We also have inmates that are supposed to be kept away from. Now, this right here, we took this upon ourselves. It's not a policy to make, but for us, since there's so much there going on, for us to be able to let the next officer coming on, hey, this is what we have. And this changes constantly because we constantly have movement coming in there. This is a very, very high liability place for 1 officer. You know, and I believe there should be 2 officers in there. Now, we also had another incident. They proposed, if there's 96 inmates in minimum east, let's put 2 officers in there. I love that. Again, those are minimum to medium custody inmates. What about when there's 96 max inmates or high medium inmates to 1 officer? That's not good. Or 192 inmates to 1 officer. Yes, they're locked down, but inmates don't stop being inmates just because they're locked down, and we learned that. Just the other day, there was an inmate fight in the cell with 2 roommates that they almost killed themselves. From what I was told, the scene looked like somebody was killed. There was blood splattered everywhere. Now, we trying to be proactive and avoid a potential lawsuit from civilians, the family members from the inmates, and also officers from being injured. And the best way is to make sure that we are secured.
How to add what, everything he just said. The administration recently just cut those 3 positions. There used to be the officers were there, and the administration decided to cut them. And we don't understand why, because like you said, he just gave examples how the high liability that's in every one of those areas. And especially at Minimum West, where you have to actually run outside to get to that area. And we already had issues in the past where an officer was in the use of force with an inmate, and we couldn't get to her right away. That was the reason why they put 2 officers out there to start.
Okay.
So, we have an issue with them cutting in positions.
Sure.
They're our safety.
Okay, we can talk about that when we caucus.
Can I ask clarification, with minimum east, you said, at the beginning, you said that if there's a maximum number, tell me that number again.
They said 96.
Okay,
That was what was sent in the email to us. Okay, also-
Minimum bay is also an open unit.
Yes.
It's an open dorm, so you got them, they're not secured at no time. They sleep in their bunks and they can get off their bunks anytime.
thank you.
And also on the manipulation of the roster to make it look as we're fat, per se, in our shift. For instance, there's been incidents where I work booking and we're down a mandatory post, and I'm aware of overtime officers being sent home. But then they go ahead and take the corporal and put him on the roster as he's doing the duties of an officer. Meanwhile, he's not. You review those packets, every single packet that needs a supervisor's signature has been signed by the supervisor. Any decision that had to be made was done by that corporal who was assigned as an officer. We still short. That corporal is always there. You know, we supposed to have a certain amount of officers in that post, corporal and a sergeant. That's also including in other posts. And she's very familiar with that when it comes to situations like that where people, they say, okay, we have 3 officers here or 2 officers here, and that may not be the case. You know, they may be getting moved throughout the day.
Okay.
The question that we also had too, that came up in our briefing on the numbers for minimum east. You mentioned the number 96. It was confusing when it came out in briefing, but they said that per administration, 102, anything over 102 inmates is going to require automatic 2 inmates, but then they said anything under 96 was 1 officer. So the 2 different numbers that came out in briefing was the confusion part. Is it 102 inmates or is it 96 inmates that require the 2 officers?
Mayor? The only number that has been put out, anything above 96 in minimum east requires 2 officers.
96, okay.
Above 96. That's the only number that has been put out.
That's a high number.
And again, minimum means the 96, those are the workers. Those are inmate workers at minimum custody inmates. But we constantly have 94 inmates to 1 officer that are max inmates. You know.
And that's the issue with Fox Charlie, you got 96 max inmates in there.
Yeah.
94.
To me, 96 is way too high to deal with 96 max inmates to 1 officer is way too high.
I search around online at both facilities, and I pretty much get the same response. They say anything above 57 inmates to 1 officer is not effective supervision when it comes to direct supervision.
Alex, I'm sorry, where did you say you got that information?
Online and other facilities that I call around the country.
And another instance is that when we're talking about direct supervision in our language in the jail right now is only gonna be DA 1 and 2 and FA 1 and 2, which direct supervision should be expounded into Delta Charlie also and Fox Charlie, because that officer does the same job as a direct supervision officer also. So on the rosters, it's not posted as a direct supervision, and for bidding purposes, which it is a direct supervision housing unit.
Alex, you have anything more on safety issues?
Yes, it comes also to Fox Alpha 1, Fox Alpha 2, Delta Alpha 2, Delta Alpha 1. We should not be self-relieving. It should be an officer there at all times. And if we are put in a situation where we have to remove the officer from one of those posts to go attend somewhere else, and we have to shut down that pot, it's a very high liability. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. I work Fox Bravo and we have an officer Fox Charlie, and then we got Fox Alpha 1, Fox Alpha 2. Now, we have one officer running 186 inmates approximately. Now, if I get into a scuffle in Fox Bravo, the officer in Fox Charlie cannot respond because he will be abandoned in post. The officer in Fox Alpha 1 that's there by himself now cannot respond either because I'll be abandoned in post. Now, I have to fight for an extra 2 minutes, and it seems like a short period of time, but when you're involved in a scuffle, that is a very long time, where life and death may depend on it, you know, and that we have to wait for a response to get there. Versus we have an extra officer there at all times, they can immediately, at least one officer immediately respond to help me or another officer out.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else with any issues on safety? Is there any projected changes to the healthcare this year?
Right now, the projected increase is around 7%. Dental's about 1%, which isn't, it's almost non-existent, but I have to meet with the county manager to see how that works itself out.
We don't know how much the county's gonna eat of that.
That's what we're gonna talk about.
Okay. When are your budget hearings scheduled?
They'll start in June, but we should know something pretty soon and start talking to employees about, nothing's changing as far as the plans, but we're not sure about the increase yet, if we pass it on to the employee or if we eat all of it, so. I think my meeting's this week sometime with him to finally hash it out, because we just got, like, our final numbers recently. I think we had an 11% increase and worked it down to about 7%.
Sure.
On the health plans, are you saying you're sticking with the current carrier that you guys have, or are you gonna open it up for negotiations again?
No, we have a contract with them for, I think, at least one more year. Yeah, 2016, yeah.
2-year contract?
We had a 3-year.
3-year with
Yeah.
Cigna?
With Cigna, yeah, yeah. But we will go out to bid once it's up.
And we got 1 more year left to
Yeah.
go. Now, is that gonna be open for us to be on that review?
We'll
with that?
invite you, yeah, we'll have an RFP committee, and I wanna say that Hernandez was on it last time, so anything that we do, we'll always invite corrections and fire, the unions, and we always have departments, because we want that input from everybody.
Well, the reason I asked is, I brought it up to Chris Garrett, I used to actually sell health insurance, so I would like to be on that.
Okay, we'll invite our union, and you pick whoever you want, so, yeah.
Okay, we have talking about the policies. Sure.
The policies that they're putting out all the time, we don't have time to read them, and they're being implemented before, we can actually get to them and read them. As far as the one they changed for 2 officers in a confinement unit, they changed it to 1. To me, that's significant, and that's a change that affects us.
You're talking about your SOPs, not
Yeah.
county policy and procedure.
Not counting.
Just wanted to
Yeah,
clarify,
yeah,
yeah.
our policies for our jail. But I know in our last contract, they put something out that they were given, supposed to be 7 days, but we don't have time to read them. They're putting out so many every day, we don't have time to read them. If something needs to be done, then let us go ahead and
What
action.
do you mean you don't have time to read it?
Well, because we all work a post when we go to work.
Yeah.
And since I'm always on a post, as soon as I hit my post, I have to do my job on the post.
Right.
So as the policies are coming out, and I'm telling you, they can, anywhere from 1 to 15 policies are shot at you every day. And it's like, I don't have time to sit down and read them, to see what the changes are to every policy. I know in our last contract, it was said that, they were gonna give us 7 days to read it, but we don't have time to read them. And they're making changes on there without, basically without consulting us, they're just putting it out. And like I said, they changed the confinement units from 2 officers to 1 officer. If you go anywhere else in the state of Florida, every confinement unit has 2 officers. So, that also becomes another safety issue, but we have no time in reading those policies.
Okay.
things I looked at last year, Al, was using union pool time to employees. We pick a few employees when they come to work. They get 2-3 hours to sit down, familiarize themselves with the massive amount of changes, and then they're able to disperse it or decide, we like this, we don't like this, we need to discuss this. So basically, here's our proposals. What I tried to do was, as much as possible, incentivize coming to work, not calling in sick, not using FMLA, because in my conversations with corrections officers and the staff, it seems to, more than any agency I deal with, you guys are crippled almost by the levels of FMLA and sick leave I've seen. And this is not a pointing finger at anybody. I've never seen an agency with morale this bad, ever, anywhere. I mean, when I went this meeting the other night, 41 people. Every single one of them told me the same thing. They're not happy with their jobs, they're working shorthanded, they feel that the folks above them either don't care about them or they're just not on top of the situation. The morale is terrible there. And we had a labor management meeting where one of the employees actually told the command staff that they had worked 17 posts short one night. 17 posts, people had called in sick. It was a mass call out. 7 employees had called in sick within the last hour before coming to work. And there were 2 captains in the meeting, or a captain and a deputy chief, and both of them sat there and shrugged their shoulders and said, "It's the first I'm hearing about this." So there's a disconnect, it would seem, between mid-level management and upper management within the agency. The word is not getting passed. I've never heard of 17 positions short in the jail. That's a recipe for failure. There's a check somewhere with a lot of zeros on the end of that if somebody gets hurt.
I'd like to add something to that. I was fortunate enough to, I was part of the class that was sponsored by the county. It was 20 of us. And, we were very fortunate and happy to be sponsored. From those 20 officers, we've only lost, I believe, one to St. Cloud PD. Pretty much, I've been there for 2 years. And like Bob mentioned, there's a huge disconnect from upper management to middle management. We shouldn't have to, sometimes we run to Major Barnell, because she'll solve our issues. Middle management, there's sometimes no I'm negotiating with them. The issue with taking you out from your post, they'll pull you from your post. They feel like they don't have to give you any explanations. The problem with the attendance, I worked for 16 months without calling out or ever being late. 16 months. December 31st, I got sick at the jail. The nurse said I couldn't drive myself to the emergency room. So they had an officer drive me to the emergency room. I was there till 4 o'clock in the morning. Returned to the jail, brought discharge papers. A few weeks later, I find out that I have an occurrence. I still don't know what an occurrence means, but I know you can get disciplined for having an occurrence. So I spoke to my lieutenant. Why do I have an occurrence? Well, because you had to leave early on the 31st. I got sick at work. I was in an emergency room till 4 o'clock in the morning. I've been here for 16 months, never been late, never called out. I petitioned with upper management and understood. And that's what we go through. On top of all the stress that we go through, we don't have any support. And, you know, it's pretty sad that we are one of the highest paid agencies in Central Florida, except for Polk and Seminole County. But it's because of that issue. I mean, we don't, you know, and it shouldn't have to be like that. Now, it's at 100% better. It's a lot better than 2 years ago. We don't have as many, you know, officers wanting to leave to other agencies. So we're a lot stable now. And I speak in part because I speak to the majority of the new officers. Captain Barnell, you know, yeah, Major Barnell, I'm sorry. Just demoting you. She's, you know, she's been very helpful, you know, in a lot of stuff. You know, we run to her sometimes, and you know, she puts out a lot of fires. But we just want a safe place to work. It's a lot of stress. Me, I don't mind because I work for the state, but we have a lot of new officers that it's very overwhelming to be in a pod by yourself with 116 guys, and you're there by yourself. So it's, you know, it's definitely a security issue. It's an issue when the inmates tell you that they don't feel safe. And, you know, we stress, we talk about inmates checking out. Sometimes they don't feel safe enough that they'll come to you, they'll make up a lie to get out of the pod and go somewhere else, because they see how much tension there is in there with only one officer. So at the same time, I mean, I don't know if moving officers out of posts, shortchanging posts, is a way of saving overtime, but you're drastically increasing your liability. Because someone is going to get hurt. Either an officer is going to get killed in there, an inmate's going to get killed in there, and the problem could be solved very, very easily. And that's just increasing communication through all three levels: upper management, middle management, and the officers. Very, very simple. Very simple. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay.
Just to clarify an occurrence, when you get an occurrence, it's an unexcused absence.
Right.
So here's a man who was, you know, has never called out, never been late, and he had to go home early because he did get literally sick at work and was sent by the medical staff. They gave him an unexcused occurrence for going to the hospital.
Yeah, my blood pressure was like plummeted, so the nurse, you know, wanted to call rescue. So I was like, oh, I don't want to get embarrassed. So they had me an officer. I dropped me off, but I mean, you know, we put in so much to this agency, and that demoralized an entire shift. You know, because we all, you know, we all support each other. So, you know, everybody asks themselves, well, if they did that to this guy, that sick, rain and shine, he's here. If they did that to him, I mean, what?
There's also been issues where officers, whether they need to leave a half hour early, even up to 15 minutes early, has been said if you left at that time, you would be charged a half an occurrence. A half an occurrence. For leaving 15 minutes or half an hour early, you will be charged a half an occurrence. What is that? You know, and that's these are issues where morale goes and everything. So if I'm gonna be charged an occurrence for leaving 15 minutes early, then why would I come to work anyways? I'll get the full occurrence and not even show up. And this is happening. This is what's going on.
These are just some issues out that's going to affect our contract talks, because if we didn't have all these issues going on, these contract talks wouldn't be so hard.
I think, you know, rules are made because there's abuse, so, I mean, I think that's why it came about, and we really, you know, I think it's an issue too, but we've really got to talk about, you know, work ethic and not, you know, for the lack of a better word, putting your coworkers in a position, because just like 15 minutes or calling out the whole day, you know, at the end of the day, that hurts the officers, it doesn't hurt me. I mean, I don't like it, I don't like
Well,
it.
the other thing is, typical no-fault attendance policies assign, the whole idea of them is to make them objective, so you avoid having somebody make subjective decisions where you can be in a position of you like him, so I don't do it to him, but I don't like you, so you get nailed. So the typical no-fault attendance policy is designed to say, if this event happens, this is the consequence. It doesn't attach judgment to it. It is purely objective. And that's why usually it takes a number of occurrences to get the initial level, and it's progressive. So nobody's going to get in any kind of significant trouble over a half of occurrence here or an occurrence there. It's only if you develop a pattern and build up a history where you get, ultimately in trouble in those kind of policies. So it's kind of, in a sense, be careful what you wish for, because the alternative to a no-fault attendance policy is having the manager decide what the level of punishment should be if you fail to show up, or you leave work, or you come in late, and then you risk that side of the coin. So I'm not making a proposal or defending what's here, because I don't know the details involved in those. I'm just saying you have to look at the big picture and appreciate the context in which these policies exist. So, lots of people, there was a time when lots of, this was the demand at Bargain is we want a no-fault attendance policy, because we want to take the managers out of it, we want to take all the subjectivity out of it, we want it just to be clear for everyone to know. So, there is a balance that has to be struck in that. And I understand what you're saying, so
Yeah.
we'll talk about it.
We agree
Balance
with
is
that.
the key.
Yeah, that's-
We agree with that. Well, we're just asking for fairness, in all
Sure.
fairness. Was it good for him to get an occurrence?
Well,
And he takes it up even higher, and they agree with the person that gave him an occurrence after he's
I'm
gone
not
to work.
defending that. I don't know the details of that, but I'm saying I could argue that it's fair that the policy be implemented the same when event A happens. No matter whether you have a person who's been wonderful, who shows up every day, rain or shine, or someone who's out all the time, they get the same consequence. Again, I'm just, we're just talking here, but we'll certainly look at this and talk about it.
But even in situations like that, your watch commander has the ability to mark it excused or unexcused, because it's happened in the past. Something like this happens on duty, it should have stopped at the watch commander, because the watch commander is the one that sent them out. See what I'm saying? So that this
I hear you.
policy is,
I hear you, and I don't know the details to that, but again, we'll talk about it on our side.
Because lastly, in my talks with the chief and others, Chief about 6 months ago told me your agency was going to outsource its internal affairs division, is that correct?
What do you mean?
She's brought in somebody from the
You were
outside.
bringing an outside entity in to handle your IAs.
She hired somebody starting yesterday.
Well, they will now work for Osceola County Corrections.
Correct.
They're a new employee, it's a new employee, but it's not contracted, it's a new employee.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you tell me about them? Are they,
They don't start until July something, I have no idea who it is, they went through a process, I know. It's just a posting, and we needed a IA supervisor, I guess it is, and they posted it. They went through the process. I don't know how many people were in the process, but the person's supposed to start July.
I was under the impression from my discussions with the chief that you were outsourcing a company to come in
No,
from the outside to handle your internal affairs.
no,
That's the first time I'm hearing
yeah,
this too.
no.
No.
So you just hired somebody from somewhere else?
It's been posted twice,
Right.
both internally and externally. And if my understanding, and then I'm hearing this now also, we just went through the process, and if somebody was selected, it's because they actually went through the process.
Right.
But they will be an Osceola County employee,
Yes.
not a vendor, not another agency that is going to be contracted, no.
And this position was opened internally?
Oh,
And
yes.
externally, yes,
Absolutely.
both.
Okay.
In-house and out.
And that position has been filled?
The person's supposed to start July.
one of the biggest sources of poor morale emanates from the Internal Affairs Division. I'd like to know as much as I can about this person soon. And Gary was with me and so was Pete. We thought you were bringing in outside entities to look at this. Can we have 10 minutes now?
Sure.
You want us to leave? You want us to keep the room?
There's that same room, 4106 is open for y'all.
Going off the record.